have everyone introduce themselves. Tell us, where you're working, what protocol, maybe just what you're excited about in Web3. How's that sound?
Hey everyone. My name is Kush DeVay. I'm a developer relations engineer at LayerZero. Been super focused, heads down on tooling and docs for our V2 product, and I'm really excited to see new applications built on LayerZero.
Hey, my name's Carl Fluke. I'm a developer advocate, is what we chose the title to be now, for the Base team. So I started working on Base. I was a Coinbase employee before on the institutional side, and then when we started doing internal testnets, moved over to Base. Two big things I'm excited for was the Ecotone upgrade happened last night, so we got to see all that blob storage stuff happen throughout today. Gas prices are still going up and down. I'm curious where they're going to land. And then second is account abstraction. So starting to put more precompiles in the chain and making account abstraction even more affordable.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Martin. I'm developer relations engineer at Ava Labs, the company building most of the Avalanche products. And yeah, I'm mostly building Avalanche Academy in our ecosystem, so it's a free online platform to learn about Avalanche and the tech. And I think I'm mostly excited about interoperability right now, connecting within the Avalanche network, but also across. Had a great project at the ETH Oxford Hackathon, abstracting away of many interoperability protocols into one, just basically across the dApp chain. It's really cool.
Hi, my name is Simon. Also do developer relations at EdgeNode, working on the graph with Kevin together. And I'm excited about, it's exciting to sit down here now with two representatives of chains that just got announced today to go live on the Graph network. So Avalanche and Base is now available on the Graph network. That just actually happened an hour ago, like the announcement. Technically, it was working a little bit longer, but you know how it is. And also, when we talk about blobs, that there is this idea about from the Graph to store that data that was in blobs, that there is no guarantee anymore on the chains, that it's still around and available for builders to query if needed through the Graph. Also excited, so generally excited to be in that space with so smart people here.
Save the blobs, right? Okay, great. So I want to talk a little bit about like the onboarding experience for developers. I think we all know like onboarding devs to your project can be a little challenging. What are some of the hurdles that you guys are seeing for onboarding developers, and what are you guys addressing in terms of trying to make it easier for developers to build on your protocol and to kind of overcome those hurdles?
I think as a developer myself in Web3, anytime I go to new documentation or a new protocols documentation, I immediately feel this pit in my stomach because of all the writing, all the different code that I have to learn and relearn and practice when getting integrated with that protocol and trying to learn about it. So I think as a developer relations engineer now facing on the other side, one of the most important things that I've found for new developers building on the protocol is good response time in Discord and Telegram for those developers, and understanding that you were once that developer, right? So putting yourself in the shoes of a beginner or intermediate developer, trying to build on your platform, seeing what their pain points are, and then iterating on top of that.
Yeah, I think support's a real important one because, I know like, especially when you're learning something new, like not knowing where to go for answers, or if it's a newer technology, like there's nothing available on the internet, to help you always. So
yeah, and the worst thing is like going to the Discord or going to their Telegram chat, trying to ask a question and getting a response 3 weeks later. And by that time, you're kind of bored with the protocol and done with it.
That definitely was one of my points, is always know your audience. Like if you can personalize that answer about like what background do they have, and kind of give your answer very specific to them. The other big one I'd say is what I see commonly come to Base is it's a big mix in between, are you learning EVM or are you just trying to see how do I do this on Base? So one of the things that Base really focused on was putting like Base as a default inside of VM and Ethers and Web3, and making it so that when you deploy on Base and learn Base, you're just learning EVM. We don't want to do custom Solidity stuff. We don't want to do custom forks of tooling. We want you to learn EVM. Part of the tagline that we had when Base launched was Base is a bridge, not an island. We want that to be the first place that new users come in, and then if they want to go to Avalanche, if they want to go to Arbitrum, we don't care. We want to scale EVM.
Awesome. I think we identified that the biggest issues for new developers onboarding are fragmentation and platform compatibility. So fragmentation is people enter the ecosystem and the information they look for, they need, is fragmented across many different platforms. Documentation, YouTube, Twitter, Telegram channels, Discord channels, everywhere, right? So that's how I onboarded. Very painful, very long. So what we chose is to unite all that in Avalanche Academy and pull in these things, because many of these things are, like you can just embed them. So really finding this one platform and be very clear about it. If your developer goes to your website, ask them where to go, and I recommend not to use the docs for this, because the docs should be thought of as a place where a developer that knows the system goes for a specific piece of information. They need to know this API call, what kind of fields do I need to provide? And find a different platform for these developers that are entering the ecosystem, where you kind of have more an approach of holding their hand, guiding them through it. And then the other thing we identified is really like, if you leave the EVM world, thinking about like, okay, it's gonna be really hard. The Solidity tooling is good by now, but especially if you go in the direction of custom VM development, it gets very, very tricky. So what we found the most effective thing is containerizing development environments, meaning basically you provide a Docker setup with everything in there, dependency. Let it be Foundry, let it be like the virtual machine, the network runner, whatever it is, right? Like all this tooling, including Visual Studio Code extensions, everything, and then ship it, and even let it be run in the browser. So even someone with a very, very low computing resources can run and participate.
Yeah, kudos to Avalanche, the Academy. We actually pointed it out on a DevRel call that we really actually liked the experience there. I went through it. So I think that's really, really a useful one. Yeah, what about you, Simon?
I agree with everything so far said. So I go into something that isn't said before. Not saying that what I'm saying now is more important than the other, but I agree on that sentiment when you dive into new technology, that often it's so intimidating trying to find out how it's going. So like for the graph, it's something like people kind of know that the graph might help with some data requirements, but like how it actually works and how to get there is not clear. So I mean, that's for every tech. So you go to the website and want to get started. And that's where I think, and I also invested a good amount of time to make this get started as easy as possible. So with the graph, for example, there's the CLI, so you install the CLI and then you can just run graph in it, and then there is like a contract address that can be copy-pasted from a block explorer, and then in the background automatically it downloads the ABI, it starts to scaffold out that subgraph and everything, and it basically in 3 commands the thing runs. And then when it's running and up and running, and we have a graphical interface that we can start to play around with, like the target audience that are Web 2 builders or that know about GraphQL already, they already feel like, oh, okay, I know this thing, now I can click here, I can run that query, and that something comes back that makes sense to me, and then they feel at home, and from there on they can start to change it in the way that they want.
Yeah, I think there's that like aha moment when you actually deploy a subgraph and you're like, oh, this is amazing. I'm getting the data that I care about, right? That's great. So we talked about like the developers' experience after they've already come to the protocol, but what about like attracting developers to build on your protocol? Like how do you guys think about finding the right fit for developers in your project, and then also like how do you like differentiate yourself from like competition and other ecosystem tooling?
I think there's 2 things that I focus on mainly. The first thing is being aware of existing developers' questions constantly and putting those questions into buckets. I usually split them into 2. Is this something that needs to be in docs, or is this something that needs to be, tool needs to be built for it? Usually the second bucket, where a tool on the front end needs to be built for something that's being asked a lot, is where I have the most fun, because that tool can be framed in a way where you build a front end for new developers that are onboarding onto the platform. You send it to a developer who's already building on the platform, and those developers, if they like the tool, and I've seen this happen, they'll send it to new developers who are trying to build on the platform or who haven't heard about the platform or protocol yet. And they come to you and they say, hey, this is super easy to build on actually, let me learn more about it. That's my main strategy that I've found going forward for the past 4 months.
Our most recent biggest growth thing is, I'm just curious, is anybody here a user of Farcaster? A couple? So Farcaster, like 3 weeks, maybe a month ago now, they released a new feature called Frames. It's essentially like a decentralized Twitter, except they made this to where you can have like a composable tweet that has actions. So you can like mint an NFT from a Twitter feed. Or in our example, we made one where you can like buy Girl Scout cookies from a tweet. So that was a small, nimble team, and it was a mix of us building our own on-chain kit, which is a framework to make frames easier, but also to do grants to people making novel frames and to other library builders. So like Frames.js came out, and Frog, which actually came out of Paradigm. So it was a mix of us like making a library for ourselves, doing a few fun frames for ourselves, giving grants to people that made those, and then also helping like the ecosystem have some competition. Because otherwise, like no competition means it stagnates. So I found that to be the most useful, is that both we go make our own thing and also kind of incentivize the community.
Yeah, I think our developer funnel looks a little bit like this. Avalanche Academy as the free online platform, anyone can enroll, just go in, learn your stuff. The next level is kind of optional, grants, right, open source contributions, give the developers a way to participate in the ecosystem. We do retroactive grants, so we encourage everyone, and if we see something good that is actually merged into the Avalanche client or anywhere else, we offer retroactive grants. And then the next thing, I think the funnel is getting very tight now, is our accelerator program. And I think that's really important as an ecosystem to have an accelerator program where you we do 15 teams. We have our kickoff next week in Lisbon. It's called Codebase, and give a $50,000 stipend to the teams to go through this 10-week program. And I think that's important, and also getting some rhythm in there. So we do it twice a year to really support teams, building out a roadmap, finding product market fit.
Yeah, the frames thing, yeah. We also, that was actually interesting, saw that happening, frames super interesting. Then we also launched just a bounty to test the waters, like, yeah, okay, build a frame that uses the graph under the hood. And we had good submissions also, like people started, and we got really also the feedback, like, I mean, the graph is, I would say, has a strong brand in the space, but still, like, some developers came, and then I talked with them, and then they said like, oh, I didn't know about the graph, and it was so cool to use and stuff. So that was really, really cool. But I mean, the frame thing is just that it's kind of like once in a lifetime thing. But I mean, generally, I would say like trying to stay on the pulse where the developers hang out and what they do, which is currently it is, I think, Farcaster is a little bit the key. But the other thing, honestly, I have to say, is also hackathons. Just hackathons in person or also remote. Why not just like creating a remote hackathon by yourselves? I mean, like it takes a lot of time, but still. There will be actually the Frameworks hackathon next weekend, right? So for any hacker, it's definitely something to check out. Hackathons are a very good source to get people trying out the product, and really also get in touch with them either in real life, they come to the booth, or you go to them at the table or online, and you're in chat groups. Very cool.
Yeah, I obviously love hackathons. I think I've been to like 30 in the last year or something. Also, I'm kind of curious too, like we talk about community a lot, and I think the developer community for our different projects is like really important. So we're able to get developers into our ecosystem. We're able to like foster their education through various methods. But how do we think about camaraderie and like bringing those communities together in a way that fosters kind of like a community feeling? And what do you guys focus around community for each of your protocols?
Yeah, I think a couple of things that we tried was office hours in Discord. That was a good one. We haven't expanded on it too much, but it's something I'd like to expand on a lot more because it allows for good transfer of thoughts in the moment when everyone is on a call. And the second one is hackathons. I completely agree that hackathons is a great way for knowledge transfer for developers who are maybe beginner or intermediate on the protocol. And they're learning with each other while they're asking you questions, and you get feedback on their pain points as well. You get to iterate on that, build docs and build tooling, go back to that. So it's really a positive feedback loop. And you may not necessarily find the developers who are going to build the best applications in that moment at that hackathon, but it leads to that, right?
Definitely, like one advantage of Base is that we have Coinbase behind us. So our distribution is definitely much more thorough across that. Obviously, I'm here for the hackathon. I love hackathons. Part of why I switched to kind of like a developer role. The main thing that Base actually tracks is we look at like quality, daily, monthly, weekly active builders, and we look at who is building. Some of that inflow is hackathons. And then we have various Discord and Telegram channels that are kind of like vertical specific. So purposefully, we'll have all the GameFi people together, the NFT people, the finance people. And then I think probably the biggest thing that helps maintain those communities is just that we can have some of the Coinbase handles and some of the bigger promotions celebrate product releases of people in our ecosystem. And that kind of gives that flywheel of keeping people interested.
Yeah, I think an important thing of also is bringing the communities together, right? Like co-hosting. That's how I got into Avalanche. I participated in the LayerZero hackathon at the Avalanche Summit. Yeah, Brian, it was very early. Brian did it himself, so very early. Just because it's 2 days before they announced their massive seed round, I think. Crazy. Yeah, really cool guy. So I think this co-hosting, you know, like co-hosting events, co-hosting hackathons, thinking about like how can we incentivize people not only use a single technology but a combination and find good solutions for that.
Yeah, for the graph we started with really creating this. I mean, in the graph ecosystem, there are like a lot of personas, if you want. There are indexers, there are delegators, curators, and so on and so forth. And we started to really create this one persona that's called the graph builders. And so that's something that we also start to try to very consistently address and send messages to the graph builders, or we do also like graph builders office hours, graph builders newsletters. There is a graph builders Telegram group and so on and so forth. And it's always like graph builders, and hopefully they understand like, okay, we're in that group. But when it comes to office hours, I actually have a question. So we have these office hours too, and you also do office hours. Maybe we can do some knowledge sharing here. And the one we have, like we do usually have like 30 minutes of a presentation. Either it's one of the core developers that presents something new, or also we invite projects building on top of the graph to walk us through. So last time, for example, we had someone that showed how to use the graphic frames. And then later on, we have like open space for discussions. How do you model these office hours? Do you just have like an open call and then you just sit in and then you see what happens, or how does that work?
Yeah, I would usually center it around a specific tool or topic that we built. You want to frame it in a certain way. Like for example, I built this decentralized verifier network tool where you can drag and drop different decentralized verifier networks and create like a config.ts file that maps all your different chains with the decentralized verifier network addresses, and then deploy your contract from there. So that's something I'm going to do in office hours on, show that whole flow, and then I think people get more inspired questions from things like that. Whereas the other way of just doing an open session, I don't think is as effective.
Ours are very similar to what you said. Most of the time we cycle through like having the core devs come talk about like what is the next OP stack upgrade, what features are going to be involved, and have discussion about it. Then we rotate in like a partner ecosystem. Then we rotate in like hackathon winner just to show that there's some independent builders out there. And then we do like an open one. And it's more or less like rotating through that.
Yeah, I think also kind of like we do developer developer community calls. I think that's also really big to have engineering leadership actually show the roadmap of the coming weeks' new features, because they are sometimes complex, so really need some time to expand.
Yeah, it's awesome. So we know community is important, community engagement. Often, I think community often has a lot of feedback about the product. How do you guys field that feedback, and how do you use that feedback to like kind of work on your roadmap and like features for different parts of your protocol?
I think open sourcing your Git PRs for your docs is a double-edged sword. Like it could work really well, it could work really bad. We tried to do it, but sometimes you get a lot of PRs that don't really help. Sometimes you do though, and I think that's a great way of organizing what you can find, right? Instead of just getting questions from Discord and Telegram and having to organize that yourselves. It's something we're thinking on and iterating on more, especially for our docs.
Our docs are open source and we allow PRs. I think our saving grace to that is that we have like a 10 to 12 week base bootcamp. And so we actually make those bootcamp people put in good PRs. And that keeps it so that people don't try to just like plug their ecosystem project in. So have a good mix of good and bad there. I think the biggest part is that the base team is still small. I think like engineering-wise, it's like 12 to 14 people. So very much so, they have a rotation of 2 to 3 engineers are only focused on community feedback for a 2-week period of time. So small team is very much so go talk to what are the problems and then how can we solve them. So it's very nice to have people actually focused on only that loop. And all the like medium term and long term stuff is not their problem for 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, we definitely had our fair share of interesting PRs to our docs. Wow. Sometimes you really like whoever would merge this, but yeah, lots of service providers promoting their own products also. Very, very odd. No, but yeah, I think like funneling all these questions. I really like the idea of like taking the questions of the community, thinking like where do we improve? Where does this go? Is this just a lack of information, or actually does it require feature changes or any like tooling around it? I really like that idea. I think we should implement that.
Yeah, and I just to add to that, like it really goes into the developer relations role of being aware and not just getting sucked into cycles of answering questions all day, right? Because once you find those similar questions and you're really thinking outside the box, you can build tooling, add to docs with those questions, and that's really the core part of the job, right?
But how do you organize it? Because these questions can come in, like they can be in person at an event, they can be on Discord, they can be on Telegram, they can be PRs. Like how do you manage that? Is that like a manual process? Is it more like happening in your head, or do you like?
Right now, it's happening in our head, in my head. So I started 4.5 months ago at LayerZero. I was the second DevRel engineer. Matt was the first. And we just hired 2 more 2 weeks ago. So yes, it's in my head right now, and I'm trying to build out processes for that.
Nice.
Would like your advice on that too.
So just to repeat, the question was how do we get feedback from the builders back to the engineering team, right?
Correct, yeah.
Honestly, I think that's one of the trickiest things. But also like succeeding it is maybe one of the most important things. So like it's also really structural. So there is a tech support team like outside in Discord, Telegram channels, and so on and so forth, but they're not part of the developer relations team. So there is kind of this organizational silo thing a little bit going on. But now they started to have a support tool actually, like a traditional support tool rolling out. And the idea is really kind of as developer relations that we need to have an eye on these support requests, that they come in and go and when they are solved, and trying to see patterns. So that's really something that I think should developer relations take on. They don't necessarily need to solve them by themselves, but at least make them aware. Because somehow I think like every request that lands in such a tool, it's, as you said before, either it's we need to update the docs, or we need to create a tool, or either it's a product thing or it's a doc thing. But like usually these when a question comes, it's an indicator that something is wrong in the developer journey. I mean, in the perfect developer journey, you go to a website, you click on the docs or whatever, getting started, then you click through, you work, and it just works, and there's no interaction needed with the team. But obviously the world is not perfect, so like this should be always signal. And I think that's something that we should also improve on.
Yeah, and I also think that like at hackathons is a great opportunity. I think maybe someone already said that, but we have a great opportunity to get people like their real honest feedback in person, one-on-one. A lot of times we're sitting there helping them right on the actual keyboard. So I think that's a huge opportunity. But yeah, those are all great answers. And also I personally find myself doing pull requests for different protocols docs all the time, just because I'm constantly like trying to integrate something with them. So looking ahead in the future, what trends do you see that are going to be really important from a developer advocacy and relations perspective that you guys are thinking about on your protocols and making a priority in the coming years?
One thing that I think I'm going to make a priority from this conversation today is something similar to Avalanche Academy. We do focus a lot on developers who have good experience with Solidity, with our protocol, but I think what we're lacking in is focusing on developers who are more beginner, who don't necessarily know what interoperability is, who have a good idea about what blockchains are, but may not know much more. and building tooling that is very intuitive so that they can use it without necessarily knowing all of the code behind it. Learning the code after, once they actually deploy an app. I really think, me personally as a developer, I get the best learnings from actually building and seeing things in action, seeing things on a front end. So I think that's something I really want to focus on at LayerZero.
Yeah, so I think for Base, our biggest thing is that there's like some 100 million KYC Coinbase users, and it's less than like 5% of them are on chain. So my main objective is to help developers go create utility, fun things on chain, and then bring all those Coinbase users over. So the biggest thing is probably making better user experiences, making gas easier, making things that'll make users naturally want to go on chain. And the more commercial users we have bringing that opportunity, more developers will come.
Nice. Yeah, I think one-click setup, that's really important. Like if you have a intense product that goes beyond integrating a smart contract interface, you need one-click setup. Like it is not feasible to give like an instruction page that has 20 steps for a new developer to onboard, because many developers, they are checking things out, right? Like they are scanning different alternatives, and you might have minutes, if not seconds, to convince them that what you're building is actually useful to them. And if they see a long instruction list, a lot of them will drop off immediately, and you won't even get a chance to show them. So I think one-click setups are really important. It doesn't have to be the final setup, but just some setup that works for the moment and where they can play around.
Yeah, getting up and running quickly as a dev is like super important, right? With anything you work on. So, what about you, Usman?
Yeah, actually, there is also the Graph Academy, interestingly, that bundles that a little bit, but it's also like, I think now there's really the process of like restructuring content again, or like not again, like as we talked about, like really bring that together, what should live where, what are docs? Like I kind of disagree with that docs, yeah, I mean, yeah, for newcomers, yes, but also there should also be open to newcomers somehow. But like, I agree, for newcomers, we work on this really zero to hero thing of like guided first step you learn this, second step you learn this, and now it is, and it builds upon each other, and there are more complex topics. Funny enough, like I personally never went to walk through such a thing, like, but maybe it's just like, I don't know. Do you, when you learn on your do you go on a guide and then you sit down half a day and say like, okay, now the first step I watch the video and then I try, and the second I usually just like say, oh, I want to do this, and then I jump in and then try to get it work, and then I'm frustrated, and then I'm kind of like, maybe I should have done this step-by-step guide.
I think it's not only giving, so every dev is different, right? And I see that it's actually a certain type of dev that will do this, and other people ignore it completely. But what I think is, when you build out this step-by-step guide, you are forced to really look into what does it actually take to start from zero. And the amount of tooling we've just built, because we ourselves had to really go in depth and be like, okay, like we assume nothing, and we go through it, and we create a curriculum. And there's so many steps we are like, okay, like, this is actually really, really hard if you don't know what you're talking about. If we only assume everything we already talked about, this is actually really tricky. So we make changes, we change error messages, small things, right? Like not major features, but like, okay, this error message at this point, if someone sees it, doesn't make any sense, right? We see it over and over in questions. Let's just like add a whole paragraph. And then, tooling, everything, I think it really helps the developer experience if you force yourself, and it's really hard and takes a lot of time.
Okay, now I'm sold.
Nice.
You guys have anything to add there?
Just two things. I definitely, when I write guides, I divide them into two spots. I say tutorials are like a learning-based step-by-step thing, and then I say how-to is you're just doing the steps and I'm not teaching you anything. And purposefully separating those for that different audience, because some people, they already know what they're doing, they just want to like, how do I do this on your chain? And the other part is that we do use like monitoring tools to look at like how long are people spending on what part of the page. And that is super helpful to help optimize like where do people get stuck.
Yeah, I think I go back to when I first started developing on Ethereum, and I was watching Nader David's tutorials on building NFT marketplaces and whatnot. Without those tutorials, I wouldn't have been able to dive in and build my own project from that base, right? Those tutorials helped me so much. So I do think
these tutorials and step-by-step guides are super important to give devs ideas, right? And give them a base where they can build their own application from there. I think they go hand in hand. But I am also very bullish on doing things yourself, coming up with an idea, coming up with your own company even, and building everything, finding everything to integrate from there. That's the best way to learn. Step-by-step guides go in that first step of that process.
Yeah, I think it's all about options. The more options your developer has, like someone says, he likes to just dive right in, whereas other people want the long haul process. They want to go through a full walkthrough. So, great. So, just real fun one. If you could describe your protocol with just emojis, which emojis would they be and why?
I would use scissor emojis. We're trying to cut away all the fat from interoperability, make it super simple through generic message passing. Use that as a base layer for asset transfer and anything else you want to do on top of the protocol.
Yep, I'd pick 3. So the first is the blue dot, just because it's Base. When we launched Base, there was like an internal Slack thing of everybody made their status the blue dot for who was in the know of if we were launching. The second would be the sunny emoji for On-Chain Summer. On-Chain Summer is coming back again in July or August, so if you want to build something for it, I'd start early. The last one's a hammer for, like, we want people to build. Build things to get more people on-chain.
Nice. Did you know the question in advance, or how did you come on? So I'd say, I think probably a web, right? Like, it's really important to understand Avalanche is not a single chain system, but like a multi-chain system. And to really, that's our main talking point, I think, at the beginning, to make people see the benefit of specialized blockchains. I don't like to call them app chains or anything like that, but specialized blockchains that are specialized for a certain use case.
Oh, wow, that's tricky.
You also didn't get the question.
No, actually, I skimmed through it, but I forgot that I should maybe prepare this one. I mean, it's also funny that there was a lot of internal discussions around which emojis that we want to, for certain things, put outside. I mean, I see that the ones from Base certainly come from that internal discussions. So yeah, maybe I can say which was the last one that we had, and it was like the UFO. So the UFO is kind of this idea of this thing that goes by itself. So it's a decentralized network that is a data network by itself. So you have an UFO that flies through space. Yeah, because also there is this idea of the graph being with the space ad stack. That was one of those inspiring things. That's why they come up with these cool patterns here from the design. So that would be the UFO then.
I was going to say a purple heart because we just love our developers. So. That's great. Well, this has been a really great conversation. I think you guys, just not even like amongst yourselves, I think we got some tips and tricks about what we're working on. We're just trying to figure out ways we can grow our developer community, grow our products usage. So I really appreciate you guys' time. So let's give everybody a round of applause. Thank you so much. And thank you.